Tonight, as the government calls a horse meat summit, one supplier knew its beef was contaminated a week before it told anyone. We asked the Environment Secretary if it's time to admit the system just isn't working. And one half of the Hairy Bikers tells us how we can regain trust in our food. Also, the men who would lead Kenya, that is, unless a war crimes trial gets in the way, how the spectre of political violence looms large over next month's election.
Wouldn't it be better to clear your name first?
The process is going on. The two are not interlinked in any way whatsoever.
Good evening. What is wrong with our food system if you can settle down to a beef lasagna and later discover that all the meat in it was actually horse? After 3 weeks of mounting evidence of contamination in our food chain, the government department responsible is finally taking the reins and holding a summit tomorrow about all this. But why are we so dependent on the suppliers themselves doing the testing? Today it emerged Findus knew about horse meat in its products for a week before it told anyone. Our science editor Susan Watts reports.
The world sees vast amounts of meat shipped across the globe every day of the year. A network of companies and their suppliers stretches out to our local food store. The revelation that beef in some samples of Findus beef lasagna was in fact 100% horse meat changes this from a story about trace contamination to one the FSA says raises the possibility of either gross negligence or deliberate criminal activity, and the police in the UK and Europe are involved.
This is a very shocking story. It is completely unacceptable. And the Food Standards Agency has said there's no reason to believe that any frozen food currently on sale is unsafe or a danger to health. But this isn't really about food safety, it's about effective food labelling, it's about proper retail practice.
The Findus contamination has been traced back to a French company called Comigel. They have a production plant in Luxembourg. Comigel issued a statement blaming
a traceability issue with one of our suppliers, of which some of the products have given evidence of the presence of horse meat when all our related meat orders require exclusively 100% certified pure beef.
The Food Standards Agency has ordered all the big food companies to test their beef products within the week. And that'll be done in labs like this up and down the country, where they can check the DNA of the meat and see whether it comes from cattle, pigs, sheep, chickens or horses. Findus said today that tests showed traces of horse meat in its beef lasagna as far back as Tuesday the 29th of January, but that
on Wednesday, 6th of February, tests confirmed that horse meat was present in a number of samples, and this information was shared with the Food Standards Agency.
So if you're trying to tell what's in the sample, what are you looking for?
We actually extract the horse or DNA from the sample, and we can amplify that and amplify it very specifically to each individual species.
Public expectations are high, but there's concern there simply aren't enough laboratories to check all of our food.
In the last 10 years, there's probably been a closure of about 10 local authority labs, which probably amounts to about half the capacity in the UK.
The industry body that represents supermarkets also said today that the system's under strain.
Blanket testing of thousands of products within the 1 week timescale being suggested is impractical for the food industry and laboratories.
And tracking back through supply chains is becoming increasingly complex.
Trying to source all of these materials from so many different parts of the world makes it difficult or close to impossible to have in place a good traceability system. The systems that are in place at the minute are, I describe as paper-based. Trails of paper that span the 4 continents of the world. And when you have a system like that without any hard scientific verification, there is lots of opportunity for substitution, for fraud to happen. And I think it seems to be this is what's happening in the current situation with the horse meat.
Even today, the list of suspect products lengthened. Tests found horse meat in Aldi's beef lasagna and spaghetti bolognese. The company said it felt angry and let down by Comigel. Tesco is also withdrawing its frozen spaghetti as a precaution.
So the responsibility for making sure that food that gets put out to the supermarkets and is totally safe rests with the manufacturers themselves, the Trading Standards Service, who are here to almost as a safety net, can carry out some surveillance. But as a result of recent budget cuts, our resources are a lot lower than they used to be. Typically, we've lost about 30% in the last couple of years, and that means that we have to be very targeted.
We don't actually know what we're buying from heavily processed foods. We don't know where it comes from, and actually we don't know what the ingredients are. The consumer is losing trust.
For now, the answers are still inside Comigel. This time it may be more about labelling than safety, but with Europe's food safety bodies, governments, the Food Standards Agency, local authorities and trading standards officers all involved, we now have a regulatory chain as long as the food supply chain, so it's easier to pass the buck.
Susan Watson, this does seem to be growing by the moment. This evening, after what we were hearing about Findus, both Tesco and Aldi withdrew frozen beef meals from sale, and the Irish authorities are now saying contamination is a Europe-wide problem. Well, the Environment Secretary Owen Paterson joins us live from Birmingham tonight. Given the scale of all of this, and I'm sure reassuring consumers is one of your top priorities now, is it time to think seriously about limiting the meat that is coming into this country from abroad, where there are clearly real traceability issues?
Well, good evening. It is clearly totally unacceptable that British consumers should be buying a product labelled beef when it contains significant volumes of horse. And what is going to happen over the next few days will be a rigorous analysis of all processed beef products in our retail outlets to analyse exactly how big this problem is, and also to see if there are any other issues such as butazolidine.
Okay, and I want to come back to what you're going to talk about with all the retailers and suppliers in the Horse Meat Summit tomorrow, but is it time to think about a moratorium or even a temporary suspension on meat coming in from abroad? That is where the traceability problem is.
Well, I think, first of all, we're in a free market within the European Union, and this is a European competence, so we have to obey the regulations of the single market. But I think before we do anything precipitate, the key thing is to get this analysis carried out, which we hope to get meaningful results from by the end of next week.
Okay. Are you saying...
we can actually present the Commission and other countries with the evidence.
Are you saying that you would like to temporarily suspend or ban meat coming in from abroad, but Europe doesn't allow you to do that?
No, at the moment we're bound by European rules. What I want to do is to get to the bottom of this. As part of your clip said, this is either a case of negligence, but there is increasing signs that this is actually a serious international criminal conspiracy. And I'm absolutely determined that we will get to the bottom of this and establish who is at fault. And that is why the FSA has been working with the Metropolitan Police, who are also working with other police authorities across Europe. Because if this is criminal, this is a threat to all consumers.
Okay,
and it is not right that people are exploiting the public.
What is your instinct then? Because clearly your department has been looking at this for, this has been developing for 3 weeks now. So is your instinct that it is about gross negligence, or is it about criminal activity?
Well, I think your clip was good. It made the difference between the trace element from DNA testing and the extraordinarily high content from this firm in Luxembourg, which has been supplying Findus. And that is absolutely, totally unacceptable, that a beef product should be passed off when actually it contains a majority of horse. So we absolutely have to get to the bottom of this, and once we've done our analysis over the next few days, working closely with the FSA and the retailers, we can then decide our next steps.
But there is a serious problem with doing that analysis in the course of the week. I mean, one of the points that the British Retail Consortium made to Susan Watson in her report is that they think it is not at all realistic to do what your department says it's going to do, which is test all processed beef products over the course of the next week.
Well, this followed a meeting I had with the FSA yesterday. I've had further discussions today, and that's why I want to go through the practical details with the retailers tomorrow, because what we want to see are meaningful results which give us a picture of what is happening so we can base some further decisions.
So you think it is possible? You think the British Retail Consortium are wrong in saying that it's entirely impractical for the food industry and laboratories? You think it can be done?
I want to go through it in detail tomorrow morning with them, because I want to have evidence and meaningful evidence by next Friday with which I can reassure the public that we are completely determined to get to the bottom of what may be incompetence or maybe a criminal conspiracy.
Okay, but isn't it already obvious that something serious has gone wrong with the system? Because you have European regulations, we've got your department, we've got the FSA, local authorities, trading standards, and everyone essentially seems to be passing the buck to someone else in the chain.
No, ultimately, those who are responsible are the retailers, because they need to sell good, wholesome food, which is conforms to what the label says it is, and which is good and attracts their customers back. So they have a very clear, absolutely clear and determined interest in making sure that the products are correct. We have the independent body, the FSA, which was set up by the last government to work independently, and that conducts a significant number of tests in its own right. And in fairness, the material that was held in Northern Ireland was stopped by intelligence which came through the FSA. They continue to something like 90,000 tests a year. Okay. But what is absolutely clear to all of us is that we have to ensure that we get absolutely to the bottom of this problem, because I'm not having a slur cast on the extraordinary efforts which British farming industry has gone to and British food producers have gone to establish reliability and traceability through their chains.
Well, given how important that is to you, could I ask you then to be absolutely clear that there are no circumstances under which the government would ban food coming in from abroad for precisely that reason, to make people feel absolutely sure and certain about British meat?
Oh, look, I will do whatever is necessary to ensure the safety of food sold in our shops, but I've got to do it on the basis of evidence. I've got to find out exactly what has happened. So you have this extraordinary high level of horse meat in a product. We found further 2 more products today made in the same factory. Perhaps this is a rogue